If you could ask a question to someone who is no longer with us, what would you ask? This might seem like an impossible question, but then you would be forgetting about a curious instrument designed for this purpose, the Ouija board. You've probably heard many stories involving this instrument, many of which are famous and have even become movies. But today, I want to do something different. I'm going to tell you some stories about the Ouija board, with ordinary people as protagonists. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, share the video, and leave your like. Your support is very important to us. Now let's get to the video. Let's start with one that's a bit more, shall we say, tranquil. A boy said he was about 12 or 13 years old when he spent the night playing with this controversial instrument. It was him, a friend, and the boy's sister, all having fun without knowing the real danger surrounding them. And a detail, all three were in the basement of the house, the perfect place, don't you think? At first, only a few random words appeared on the board, nothing too frightening. But then the strange messages began. First, the board spelled out the phrase, "I can see you through the window." A bit scary, but a difficult assertion since the children were in the highest part of the house. Then, the board delivered another sentence, "I can see you through his eyes." Well, if it were me, I would already imagine that someone in the room was possessed or something similar. But the young ones continued trying to understand a bit more of what was happening. They asked more questions to the board and received the response, "I'm under the car." But which car, you may ask me? Well, it happens that the basement had only one window through which you could see the backyard, the house's parking lot, and a small forest in the background. If the thing was under the car, then it could only be in the garage. After discussing a bit about whether to go check the car or not, the three gathered the courage to go down and take a look. With a flashlight in hand, one of the children crouched to peek under and saw a huge cat. It could be just a coincidence, but the cat ran towards the boy's face. He narrowly avoided getting hurt. The three ran back into the house, and almost as if it were a terrible prank, the lights began flashing frantically and remained that way for several minutes. That day, the three friends hid the board in the basement and never tried their luck again. Well, I already warn you that from now on, things are going to start heating up a bit more. After the boy lost a friend in a plane crash, he and his girlfriend decided to use the Ouija board to, let's say, venture into the beyond. However, fear prevented their adventure from lasting long. The girl was terrified, and when the two began to feel a strange presence in the room, they both thought it best to put away the board. But before that, they decided to ask one last question about the deceased friend. It was at that moment that the Ouija pointer started moving rapidly from side to side, spelling out complicated words, difficult to understand. Almost immediately, the boy and the girl put away the board and went to sleep. The problem is that they weren't even safe in their dreams. About an hour after falling asleep, the girl dreamed of her own room, and right in the corner of the room, in the corner, there was a kind of motionless skeleton observing the couple. When the two locked eyes, the skeleton ran towards her and started screaming wildly. Its large skeletal mouth was so close to the girl's face that it seemed real. She woke up with a start and called her boyfriend. The two decided to throw away the Ouija board that same night. What they didn't expect was that the object simply disappeared. It was never found or even seen again. And don't be fooled by these stories. It's not just friends and lovers who use the board to have fun, if we can call those occasions fun, right? The next case I'm going to tell you about involves a mother and her young children. The woman asked the two if they wanted to play with the object, and since they were unaware of the danger they might face, they decided to accept without thinking twice. At first, everything went well, quite funny, and it really seemed like someone or some force was moving the pointer back and forth, things like that. The words poo, dog, and butt were spelled out, which made the family burst into laughter, all very funny. But the mother wanted to take the game a bit more seriously and told the children that they would try to contact the spirit of a person. Coincidentally, a friend of the woman had disappeared 2 months earlier. So why not try to find clues about him? And off went the mother. First, she asked who they were talking to, and the answer was precisely the name of the missing friend, Josh. It could be a coincidence, couldn't it? But the rest of the story, my friend, will prove to you that perhaps coincidences do not exist. When she asked if this Josh was her friend, the woman saw the Ouija pointer respond affirmatively. The little girl said she saw her mother visibly upset with the answer. After all, if it was Josh's spirit, who was answering the questions? So there was no hope that he could be found alive. To understand better, the woman asked where he was and received as a response, "In a lake." Nothing supernatural happened to the family that day. The mother just went to bed with a certain heaviness in her chest, as if her worst nightmare had come true. Still, the next day she woke up reasonably well, unconcerned, thinking that the previous night's episode was just a silly game. It was then that 2 weeks later, Josh's body was found. And guess where? In the lake. We don't know exactly how it happened, but it is believed that the man fell and, not knowing how to swim, drowned. A tragic ending, there is no doubt, but a less frightening ending than the story of a 30-year-old man named Vince. Like the other characters in the other cases, he used the Ouija board to pass the time with some friends. Vince went down to the basement of his house and started asking questions to the object. Shortly after the first attempt, the lights in the room started flashing, the atmosphere became cold, and the pointer began forming words. It seems that the spirit in the place was Russian and had been murdered years before. As tense as the answers were, the group of friends didn't mind much and went down to the kitchen to have a snack. The problem is that they forgot to put away the board when they left the basement, and it seems that this is not very recommended when dealing with this instrument. When the group returned to the room, they all noticed that several objects were out of place. The light was dimmer, and the atmosphere was dense, almost palpable. Besides that, the board was lying on the floor exactly as they had left it, or at least that's what everyone imagined. As soon as they took a look at a large mirror on one of the walls of the basement, they could see that the pointer of the board was moving rapidly through the letters, forming impossible words to understand. Meanwhile, outside the reflection, the instrument remained motionless. That scared the group of friends so much that they thought it best to bury the board and never speak of it again. What I can tell you, my dear, is that these were just 4 stories involving this enigmatic instrument, but there are many others out there. Would you like to know more? Who knows, maybe I'll come back to tell you a few more. But I ask you to stay calm. Don't use the Ouija alone. You might regret it. I say goodbye here until next time. And remember, be careful.